horrible, like Loma Prieta were to happen and the roads were to break again, how would I get across the whole city and across the highways to get to them and then get all of them back home?
It's all going through your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And was there any damage at your house? Because I know my place there's no damage, and we've pretty much haven't found anyone who said there's damage. Did you have any damage at your place?
No, just like the pictures of cricket. You could hear the windows rumbling. I thought they were going to pop, but a cabinet I think opened, and that's it. But no damage.
Ms. Hernandez, thank you very much for stopping and talking to me on the fly like this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. As you heard, she said there's no damage, at least at her place. And we're over, as I said, in the Seven Trees neighborhood. I've stopped at three different businesses where you would expect to see damage during an earthquake. We went to a beverage, I'll call it a beverage retail shop, and none of the bottles had broken. As they said, there was no damage there. Then we went over to a grocery store, again, no damage. And now I'm inside a 7-Eleven here in Seven Trees. And nary a thing is out of place. Everything is as it should be. The workers here said they did feel the earthquake, but there is no damage. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing as we move through this portion of East San Jose, the Seven Trees neighborhood, is that, yes, people felt it, and it was scary, but there's no damage. And it was felt, of course, in downtown San Jose as well. Again, scary because that's shaking. You have that thought where, okay, it's supposed to stop now, and it keeps going, and you start to think, okay, this could be really serious. As Ms. Hernandez said, you think this could be the big one. But there was no damage, and photographer Dave Serrano and I are going to continue to scour the area just to make sure we're not missing anything. We're live in the Seven Trees neighborhood of San Jose. Jesse Gary, KTVU, Fox News. I'll head back to you in the studio.
Jesse Gary in the epicenter, where that 5.1 magnitude earthquake struck on the Calaveras Fault in that area, saying no damage. You can't see anything, but you hear that the fear in the voices of people who did experience it at the time and who did experience Loma Prieta at the time. I can tell you right now that the San Jose Fire Department has received no emergency calls related to the earthquake. That is the update there, and no major disruptions to operations at the San Jose International Airport at this point. So that is the good news. But we want to check in right now with Richard Allen, director of the Berkeley Seismology Laboratory, that can talk to us a little bit more about what has happened here. Richard, thank you for joining us.
Sure, happy to join you.
So, Richard, tell us your thoughts about this quake that struck earlier today. I mean, we saw in Oakland office buildings evacuated closer to where the epicenter is, or right where the epicenter is. Not much disruption in activity there, but what can you tell us about, in your experience, about earthquakes like this?
Yeah, so this was our current estimate of the magnitude is about magnitude 5.1 earthquake. So not particularly large. I would call this a sort of a moderate earthquake, the kinds of earthquakes that we have to be ready for all the time. It looks like it was on the Calaveras Fault. So it's just where the Calaveras and the Hayward Fault just touch one another. Immediately east of San Jose is where the epicenter was. It is at about a depth of 7 kilometers. So again, that's a very typical depth for earthquakes in California. But having said that, it was clearly felt by a lot of people pretty much across the entire Bay Area. And so magnitude 5, we don't expect a lot of damage for an earthquake of this size. As everybody in the Bay Area knows, we have to be ready for a large magnitude earthquake, by which I mean a magnitude 7. To give people a sense, a magnitude 7 is going to have shaking that's about 100 times stronger than the shaking that we just experienced in this magnitude 5. So I don't expect there to be a lot of damage. This is sort of a great reminder that we do have to be ready for bigger earthquakes.
I was thinking back as you were talking, Professor, to the earthquake that hit in the Vallejo area back in 2014, and it was a 6.0, and there was serious damage and injury after that earthquake. The difference, as you were saying, between a 5.1 to a 6.0 to a 7, it might not sound like a lot to us, but there is a big difference.
That's right. It's called the magnitude scale because as you go up by one digit from 5 to a 6, you go up by an order of magnitude. So it's a factor of 10 increase in the amount of shaking. That's right. So it doesn't seem like a lot, 5, 6, 7, but it's actually a very big difference in terms of the amount of shaking. And you're right, that earthquake, the magnitude 6, close to Napa, it caused a fair amount of damage, but the damage in that earthquake was pretty localized. It was mostly in Napa. It wasn't where we felt it across the Bay Area. It was in the middle of the night, in case people don't remember. I remember being woken up by that earthquake in the middle of the night. But it only caused damage in Napa. And again, that's because it's a magnitude 6, and so it does do damage, but in a relatively localized area, as opposed to a magnitude 7 that can do damage over a much larger area. The other thing that's really interesting about this earthquake is the early warning system. So we've had an early warning system active now in the Bay Area for a few years, and the early warning system successfully detected this earthquake and pushed out an alert across pretty much all of the Bay Area. The MyShake app, which is available for free, delivered about 95,000 alerts. There's the alert. You can see the alert there, the critical alert that went out to the MyShake app. And the Android system also delivered an alert out across all of the Bay Area as well. So it's great to see this new technology that really has only been implemented in the last few years, delivering on its promise and giving people just a few seconds of warning so they can drop cover and hold on.
Yeah, I wonder if there are any, they're constantly looking to improve the system based on interviews I've had over the years. When the Shake Alert system was launched a couple of years ago, you can't do everything. Of course, it can't really forecast an earthquake like you can forecast the weather a few days out. This can only give you a short amount of time. But is there any work underway right now that is evident to maybe improve the technology at this point?
Yeah, so there's exactly like you say, there's a big difference, an important difference. So Shake Alert is about an alert of shaking. So what we have to do in that case is we detect the earthquake as it begins, and then we push out a warning that shaking is on the way. And so that limits the amount of warning that's possible. We're talking about seconds, tens of seconds. The best case scenario is about 1 minute worth of warning, and we cannot do better than that. The other option, the other thing that everybody always asks about, of course, is predicting earthquakes. Can we predict that there's going to be an earthquake next week? And we cannot do that. And most seismologists think it's very unlikely that we will ever be able to predict earthquakes in that sense. And so the earthquake early warning, that's what we are able to do. That's the amount of warning that we can do right now.
Can I ask you what you make of the fact that we showed video of the Oakland Police Headquarters, which right close, a quarter mile from where we are in Oakland's Jack London Square, right near downtown Oakland. OPD evacuated its headquarters building. As I look around and I can see around the Oakland estuary, I don't see anybody out in the streets. I don't see anybody evacuating their buildings aside from OPD. The fact that most people are treating this as a little bit of a blip in their day, but now it's business as usual. Our previous guest said everybody should be evacuating their buildings. What do you make of the Bay Area's reaction to what just happened?
Yeah, this is a magnitude 5 earthquake, so this is not a huge earthquake. Now, there are buildings that we have more concern about than others. I know about the Oakland Police Department, for example, but there are some buildings that are of more concern than others, and therefore people should probably be reacting differently in those buildings than the ones that are built to modern building codes. But we do not expect a lot of damage in a magnitude 5 earthquake because it isn't particularly large on the scale. And again, if we had a lot of damage for a magnitude 5, we would be in real trouble when we have a magnitude 7 earthquake. So of course, I wouldn't second guess for a moment anybody's decision to evacuate a building. There could be all kinds of reasons why people would decide, it's safer for us just to all exit the building right now, make sure everything is okay before we decide to return back to the building. But this obviously isn't the kind of event that we would expect everybody to evacuate buildings and remain out of the building for a long period of time. It's just not that big of an earthquake. So,
Richard, I did want to ask you a question here. Aftershocks, foreshocks. Is there a way to tell yet whether a quake that is struck, such as this one, 5.1 magnitude, is a foreshock or an aftershock at this point?
Well, we all certainly wish we could do that, don't we? Unfortunately, we can't. We do know that about 1 in 20 earthquakes in California is a foreshock. And what we mean by that is that there's about a 1 in 20 likelihood that when we have an earthquake, we then have a bigger earthquake that follows it. So 1 in 20, of course, is not a huge probability, but it's not insignificant either. So again, this all comes back to the fact that this should be a reminder to us all that we live in earthquake country. and we need to think about what we do for earthquake preparedness. Do we know what our plan is? Do we know how we're going to gather together with our families after an earthquake like this? How are we all going to find our way home? Once we get home, do we have supplies for a few days if we find ourselves cut off after a big earthquake? Do we have water and food and other kinds of supplies that we would need for 3 to 5 days following an earthquake? So whether this is a foreshock or not, these are all reminders to think about what would we do in a really damaging earthquake.
Yeah, that's our best combat against something like that, is to plan ahead, to be sure. Richard Allen, Director of the Berkeley Seismology Laboratory, thank you so much for your insight. And of course, a reminder from our conversation with you is download that Shake Alert app. It does not cost a thing to do, and it can give you the piece that you need, just giving you a heads up, even if it's just a couple of seconds before you feel the shaking in the ground. Richard Allen, again, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And as we're coming up now to almost an hour, can you believe, since the earthquake happened, we'll just remind you, if you felt something about an hour ago at around 11:42, that was in fact an earthquake. It was a magnitude 5.1 that was centered in southeast San Jose, felt across a wide part of the Bay Area. We're up here in Oakland, about 40 miles away from the epicenter. Clearly felt it in our newsroom. One of my good friends in the newsroom had the alert app on his phone. He looks at me and he says, we're about to have an earthquake. So he and I locked eyes, and about 5-6 seconds later, we felt that shaking. If we could swing back to the South Bay, because that's clearly where people felt it most. Sure. Of course, a lot of people, this happened while they were on mass transit right before the noon lunch hour. If we can bring in Stacey Hendler-Ross from VTA on the phone, we would like to understand from your agency's viewpoint what happened at the time of the earthquake and how are things now?
Well, at the time of the earthquake, a lot of the people on our trains and our drivers probably didn't feel very much as the trains were moving 35 to 55 miles an hour. But at this point, we can tell you we don't have any reports of damage, no reports of injuries. And right now what we're doing is an inspection of the entire system. So our trains are in what's called restrictor speed, which is going 15 miles an hour throughout the system to make sure that the trackway is clear, the overhead lines are clear, the platforms, the stations, there's no damage there, and they're doing a visual inspection. And then we have several departments, our safety department, engineering, wave power and signal, are going through the system to look for any potential damage as well. But as I said, yet we have no reports of damage and certainly no injuries. Our passengers are still on the trains. The trains are still stopping at the stations to let passengers on and off. They're just going more slowly throughout the system to be sure that there are no problems with the infrastructure.
So, of course, Stacey, in a few hours from now, people are going to be heading home for the rush hour. How long do you plan for the inspections to take on the rail lines, and do you anticipate there being any disruption to the evening commute?
Well, we only have about 42 miles of track throughout Santa Clara County, so ordinarily it won't take very long, maybe up to an hour, and we're already 40 minutes into it to do those inspections. Now, that depends on what's found, obviously, in terms of any kind of damage or any other problems, but we should be able to get through the inspections within the hour. It's causing some minor delays in service because we have trains throughout the system. So each train is doing sort of its own inspection in its own little area. And passengers may run into maybe 10 to 20-minute delays, and it may take a few hours to catch up on that. So there could be some delays. People should hopefully pack their patience, expect their trains to be running a little bit behind. But so far, so good.
Okay. Great to hear. A good report there from VTA down in the South Bay. Again, the earthquake itself was centered down in southeast San Jose. VTA serves a large portion of the South Bay. We are happy to hear that there is no injuries or damage reported, though it's going to take a little bit longer this afternoon just to make sure that everything is A-OK. Thanks for joining us.
All right. We want to show you some video now of just what it was like for some others around the Bay Area that had to deal with the shaking or caught it on camera. I did not. I did not have my camera ready with me, but you can see this video right here. From someone that posted it online. His name is Abhay Kashyap in San Francisco. He says the MyShake app gave him enough notice to start recording this video on his IKEA lamp, and you could see not violently shaking there, but it just shows you the effects of what this 5.1 magnitude earthquake caused for many people around the Bay Area. And it really does, as we mentioned just a few moments ago, highlight perhaps the need to download the free Shake Alert app just so you can get a heads up. This is a minor reason why you can use it, just to start recording, but you can use it for more important issues, obviously. God Gracia in the time of need here, and we heard an expert say earlier about this hitting on the Calaveras fault area, and and she said that in the next 30 years they're expecting something pretty big. So again, that is a reminder about being prepared, getting your preparations in place, because you just never know when this is going to hit. But scientists have been analyzing this for quite a while, and so you should get ready just in case something like worse happens than what we're seeing today.
I'm sure that seismologists would say that instead of grabbing our phones to video the lamp, we should get underneath a safe structure, but I'm sure we'll get more from that. By welcoming really a world-renowned seismologist here to the new newscast, we'd like to welcome Dr. Lucy Jones. You're at Caltech. You're a seismologist, an earthquake expert. What do you make of what we just felt here in the Bay Area?
Yeah, that's a pretty normal Bay Area sort of earthquake. Magnitude 5s on the Calaveras fault happen every 10 or 20 years. So it's not at all a surprise. It's part of just what we are here in California.
Are you waiting for a bigger one to come soon?
Oh, that's the problem. I study them. I'd love to be able to experience it. But on this case, there's no particular reason to think that this is going to be a foreshock to a bigger earthquake. Also, of course, there's no reason that it can't be. Every earthquake in California has about a 5% chance of being followed by something bigger within the next 3 days. 1/4 of them are within an hour. We've already gotten past that for this. And 3/4 of them are within the first day. So at this point, given there's only been a couple of aftershocks, it looks like it's a pretty small aftershock sequence. Probably something else felt today. If you're right on top of it, another magnitude 3 or so, probably that'll be it. But as I said, a few percent chance that we could get something bigger.
And so, and you're basing that off of just your historical study of what we've seen over the past few years. Now we had an earthquake expert from San Jose State University, Kimberly Blisnik, and she said that this is one of the Calaveras fault is one to watch over the next 30 years. I want to get your assessment on that.
Well, it's definitely one of the major faults of the Bay Area. The 30 years, though, is actually not that we think something's going to happen in 30 years. Rather, it's the time frame in which we chose to evaluate the probabilities, actually because it's the length of most people's mortgages. So it's seen as being a time frame in which people are making financial decisions. And so what's your chance? And for this fault, a 30-year time frame comes up with an 11% chance of a big one. So that sort of tells you they don't happen very often. It's probably every few hundred years that you have a really big earthquake on this fault. Whereas like the San Andreas or the Hayward, both are on the time scale more of hundreds of years, 100 or so years.
Can I ask you to weigh in on what some might see as the relative nonchalance of the Bay Area in reaction to a 5.1 in the most populous city in the Bay Area? We have video of people in the Oakland Police Headquarters building evacuating, that building about 40 miles away from the epicenter. For the most part, it seems like life is back to normal, less than an hour after this 5.1 happened. Do you think we need to take things more seriously? Is this an inappropriate response to something that really should be taken as a warning instead of a wrinkle in our day?
Well, but taking it as a warning doesn't mean you need to disrupt the day. All right. So if you're going to evacuate, why? Right? Presumably it's because you think there may be some danger from that building. And the chances of an earthquake down really rather far ways away from Oakland being able to damage the building up in Oakland, it would mean not just that you're a foreshock, but that you're a foreshock to something much larger. It would have to be that 6.5 or more to do anything in the Hayward Fault. And that's, off the top of my head, a 1 in 1,000 chance that you'd have that sort of foreshock. And so, being aware of it, what is it appropriate to do if you've got a 1 in 100 or a 1 in 1,000 chance of having an earthquake enough larger that it's actually going to be doing some damage? We need to remember this really isn't doing that much damage, and it's a long ways away from Oakland and San Francisco. So I like people to think about it, ask for themselves, what do I want to do 100 times So I've done it the once when the bigger earthquake actually happens.
Yeah, you deal with probabilities, so that's a good way of putting it. You said just a short time ago that this is the largest quake in the Bay Area since 2014, the Napa quake, the 6.0 at the time here. What will you be looking at as an expert in this field? What will you take away from this 5.1 magnitude in southeast San Jose? How it will be added to your data and used in the future?
Okay, this is a type of earthquake that happens about once a decade, and therefore we've got a lot of them in our history so far, and I don't think it's going to change much. Every earthquake we go in and look and see if it's showing us something different than what we already knew about the fault system. This one is unlikely to be showing anything different. It's pretty expected. One of the things we can do with it that's very important is to look at how shaking varied across the Bay Area. Because when you do have the really big earthquakes, your local soil condition can amplify the shaking. If you remember what happened in the Marina District in 1989, where they were at least 60 miles, I think they were 100 kilometers away from the earthquake, and yet you still had all of the damage that happened, and that was because of local soil. So the shaking recorded from this earthquake at different locations is going to be able to really help us get a better map of exactly where all that distribution is, and every earthquake can fill in details on that process for us.
Do you expect to see a bit of an increase in the number of people looking to seismically retrofit their home, or maybe looking into earthquake insurance once again? Because, you know, the percentage of people who take those two, somewhat drastic moves that require a lot of money is not that big in proportion to all Californians or everyone in the Bay Area.
Well, right. I mean, I think that when we talk about taking things too lightly, the lack of earthquake insurance in this state is really pretty appalling. There was a period right after the Northridge earthquake where it became very difficult to get, it became very expensive, and people held on to that memory. The California Earthquake Authority now has really affordable products. They have you can choose what level of deductible you want, and they have enough assets that they could pay for 2 repeats of the 1906 earthquake with their current assets and their current policyholders. So we really need to rethink that aspect of it. We need to remember that our building code is a life safety only code. So if you total financial loss of your building, but it doesn't kill you, that's what the building code is trying for. Yeah. And we are intentionally building in buildings that will behave very badly. And I think the financial vulnerability is way underestimated. And I hope people do look at this. The one thing, because of that possibility for the foreshocks, you got to know that the insurance companies are going to put a moratorium of 2 or 3 weeks on actually purchasing such a policy. So don't jump out and try to do it today. But I would strongly recommend people rethink that aspect. We tend to be very afraid of the earthquake killing us, which is extremely unlikely, and we aren't nearly afraid enough of the earthquake bankrupting us. Yeah.
So, since you're on the subject and the damage isn't too extensive, I do want to ask you, what does need to be done to shore up things on the financial side of things?
I think the state should pass what's called a functional recovery building code standard, which means that you can repair your building after the earthquake. And in fact, there was just a building built in the Bay Area that I was hearing about as affordable housing. Actually, in San Francisco, they made the commitment to do it to the functional recovery standard instead of just life safety, and it did not cost any more than they had originally planned for. So we really think that we could accomplish this with some very small increase in the cost of construction, and it would make a huge difference in the long run for how we recover from earthquakes. That's something that's probably going to need to be done at the state level. It got through the legislature once and was vetoed by Governor Brown. I'd like to see us try and do it again.
Okay, Dr. Lucy Jones, I feel like this is something we could talk about for an hour, and hopefully we get to bring you back tomorrow during Mornings on 2. You've been a wealth of information as usual. Dr. Lucy Jones, Caltech seismologist, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, we want to show you this information that you see right here on your screen at Cal OES, actively coordinating with local authorities in the region to evaluate any preliminary damage or issues created as a result of this earthquake and provide any assistance that is needed from the state level. And I can tell you that they sent out this information just a short time ago, so it's just something that we're keeping an eye on here. And again, we don't see anything that raises to the level of any significant damage. And you heard from Dr. Lucy Jones, perhaps one of the most preeminent people that research this kind of thing. But it's always good to understand the process of information and how things are going to be targeted should something of greater magnitude be hit.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that we can do for you, minutes after an earthquake, is to share other people's reaction to it. Right? You've called your loved ones. You've turned us on to see what are people thinking. So let's hear now from people who were in the South Bay when the shaking started, right there in the community of Seven Trees in southeast San Jose. Here's what they have to say.
I was laying down doing his ABCs, and then I seen him cover his face. I guess he felt it first before I did, and then I noticed what was happening. And so he just got scared, and then we jumped up and went outside.
You were inside your house?
We were inside the house, yeah.
Bottom floor, middle floor?
Bottom floor, laying just on the carpet, learning ABCs, and then everything started shaking. The windows went, the cabinets went, everything. It was weird. It lasted a very long time. It was scary, thinking it was not going to stop again like the last time. Because, I mean, you feel the little ones in between, but then you get one like that and you're thinking, oh God, there it is. It's coming. It's here.
And of course, that mom had said earlier that she'd been through Loma Prieta. And for anyone who's been through Loma Prieta, this is sort of a reminder of that. Nothing along the lines of what we saw and felt back in 1989, but still, when you know how bad it can be, you're hoping this isn't going to match or exceed that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see the concern. You can hear it when we spoke to her earlier, and we got a chance to see her there now. All right, I just want to update you on some things happening around the Bay Area here. SF.gov tweeting the departments. They're going to evaluate any preliminary issues due to the earthquake. Currently, no reports of any damage, significant impacts to San Francisco, and that they'll continue to monitor and coordinate as necessary. Of course, they're going to be certainly evaluating the infrastructure and making sure that there was no significant damage. But this is not the type of earthquake that would have likely caused anything. And as we noted just a short time ago, this has been the biggest earthquake since the one in Napa, and that was a 6.0 earthquake at the time, and there was damage as a result of that.
For sure. Let's swing back to one of our crews who's on the ground down there in the South Bay. We'll turn to our Christina Rendon. You're there in downtown San Jose, talking with people who felt the shaking, perhaps still a little bit nervous even now an hour later. Christina.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Garcia. In fact, we spoke to two people from India. They're students at Northwestern. There's a campus building inside here, and they've been working in their classroom. Never before had they experienced an earthquake, let alone a 5.1. They told me they freaked out. They started running. That's all they could do because the building started to be evacuated. This is about a 9-story high building, 14-story building, and everyone started to be evacuated. So they hit the ground running, going down the stairwell, and they said they weren't even sure what was happening because, one, they've never experienced an earthquake before, and then two, the building was moving as they were trying to evacuate. So they said they weren't sure where their feet were going. They were trying to get down the steps, and the stairwell was just kind of swaying, and they had no idea what was going on. Quite a scare for them. They've only been in the United States for 2 months and never even thought that they would be experiencing an earthquake today. They said it was really, really scary because it was the fear of the unknown for them. A lot of people here in the Bay Area are used to this. They're used to earthquakes. They're used to emergency preparedness. And we have these shake it out events to try and prepare. And they had no idea what they were about to experience. So that was definitely a scare for them. If you talk to some other people down at City Hall, which I did, they said that, this is something that is common. They have experienced it, but they did admit that this was something that was quite nerve-wracking for them as well, because they were up at City Hall and the entire building was swaying there as well, and they weren't quite sure what to do, and they said it felt like a really, really long time. One woman estimated that she felt like it lasted a minute. Granted, that probably was not the case, but in the moment when things are shaking and the building is swaying, you kind of lose track of time and just try to figure out what exactly is going on. Third story, we spoke to a woman. She said she felt the shaking. She wasn't quite sure it was an earthquake, so she texted her boyfriend and she wrote, "I think I'm in an earthquake." She said he didn't respond, so she's hoping that he is okay, but granted, he is at work right now. So a lot of different stories coming out from people who were nervous about what exactly was going on. They weren't quite sure. And I've been trying to get my hands on some surveillance video to try and figure out what it exactly looked like inside of these buildings in the downtown area. I've called a couple of liquor stores. All of them tell me that things are fine. Their products are still on the shelves, no breakage of any glass. But there is a building here, and there's a security guard who works inside who said, "I have a great vantage point because these windows are full of glass. I was looking right out at the downtown street, right downtown on Santa Clara and 3rd Street, and I could see the trees swaying. I could see the cars kind of moving. The buildings were swaying as well. So it was a great vantage point for him. So we're doing our best to try and get some video of what that actually looked like, because we're hearing all of these stories of what people are experiencing and what they've witnessed. But we really like to see it for ourselves in person as well. So we're going to keep trying to track those down. Just a lot of people were kind of taken aback by what happened. This is really kind of the big story of the day down here. But I will say, like I mentioned earlier, if you talk to some people down here or just kind of look around, you wouldn't think there was an earthquake because it's kind of business as usual. People are still out and about. They're walking down the sidewalks. They're eating lunch. They're going back to work. It's definitely the talker of the day, though, because this is an area, again, as we know, is used to earthquakes. And so people here are just kind of trying to wrap their heads around what they just experienced. A lot of it really nerve-wracking for them to feel the earth shaking like this and to feel the ground move beneath their feet and the walls swaying as they were trying to evacuate the buildings. And that's really the sense I got from a lot of people. A lot of these buildings were evacuated for maybe about 15 to 30 minutes. You think downtown San Jose, there's a lot of high rises, a lot of people at work. So there was a lot of people out during this hour. Everyone seems to be back in their buildings, back at work and business as usual. But everyone seems to have a story about what they were experiencing when this 5.1 earthquake hit. Garcia, Andre.
All right, Christina McBrone reporting for us live in San Jose. She was heading there to work this morning when her story changed because of what happened here. Christina, thank you for that update. Earlier, we spoke with Stacy Hendler-Ross with VT, who was on the phone with us, telling us about the inspections that were going to be happening across the 42 miles of rail that they have down there in the South Bay. At one point, trains were ordered to reduce their speed. Right now, though, we just got an update from VTA that says their track inspection has been complete and there is no damage. So that's certainly some good news for that area. Not that we didn't expect it at a 5.1, as we've been going over this last hour with some of the experts that know exactly the damage that something like this can cause. But it's good to hear after the inspections, good to do your due diligence to make sure everything is on the up and up and no damage to tracks there. So your evening commute should be as normal as it can be.
Yeah, it's good to have that confirmation, even though we knew that would likely be the case. We'll mention here quickly in just a couple of minutes, we expect to speak live with San Jose's mayor. Sam Liccardo, of course, his headquarters is right there in downtown San Jose in the City Hall building. So we'll talk with the mayor of San Jose in just a minute. If we can also bring in some more voices from those who felt it most. We'll listen now to what a woman, Marissa Sandoval, had to say. She was in San Jose when the earthquake hit at about 11:42. Let's hear her experience.
I just exited my car, and then as soon as we did, it felt like the ground was shaking, and it felt like you had sea legs for a little bit. But other than that, everyone acted like normal, and then I got phone calls from parents asking if we were okay, and of course we were.
When you say phone calls from parents, what do you mean?
My mother-in-law and my mom.
Okay.
Just checking in to see if we were okay.
Did it scare you at any point? Did you think, oh my gosh, I need a duck and cover?
No, honestly, it felt like the ground shaking, like vibrations, and it was like, okay, what's happening? And I didn't realize it was an earthquake, honestly, but they felt more of the earthquake on their side of town.
And where are they?
On the east side of San Jose and south side San Jose. Okay. They said the buildings were actually shaking.
Any reports of damage that they told you about?
Not as far as I know. So hopefully we're fine.
Yeah, again, and here we are an hour after the earthquake that happened at 11:42. Yep. No reports of any injuries or damages, what you'd expect. But again, good to have that conversation, and especially you hear from the woman here, and your thought immediately goes to, where are my loved ones, and are they okay? Let's get that phone call tree going just to make sure everyone's all right.
You heard from that woman who was doing the ABCs with her son, sitting down in her house and becoming concerned because she'd been through Loma Prieta as well. I'm certain that that same sentiment went through the minds of so many people across the Bay Area as well. Sky Fox is surveying the area area of San Jose, and as Gassi mentioned just a short time ago, we're going to be talking with Mayor Sam Liccardo. In just a moment, we understand Sky Fox is over SAP Center, not far from there, just a block away from SAP Center. We see some fire trucks there. Not sure what that's about at the moment, but we'll try to get some information about what is happening in that community right now. And earlier, we spoke with Richard Allen. He's director of Berkeley's Seismology Laboratory. And here's what he had to say, in particular, though, about the MyShake app.
The other thing that's really interesting about this earthquake is the early warning system. So we've had an early warning system active now in the Bay Area for a few years, and the early warning system successfully detected this earthquake and pushed out an alert across pretty much all of the Bay Area. The MyShake app, which is available for free, delivered about 95,000 alerts. There's the alert. You can see the alert there, the critical alert that went out to the MyShake app. And the Android system also delivered an alert out across all of the Bay Area.
Wholeheartedly ask you to obey.
Attorney Upper, I'm sorry for the interruption. Your objection, sir?
Mischaracterization of who I am and the way it was said. I feel like it was talking down.
All right, your objection's noted. It's overruled. The state may continue.
You must not consider anything about Darrell Brooks other than his conduct in downtown Waukesha on the evening of November 21, 2021. Nothing he's done before that, nothing he's done since.
Just wanted to give people an update on that and let them know that it is free to download. And as you mentioned earlier in the newscast, it reminded me, I think I downloaded it and then I turned it off for some reason. I don't know. But it reminded me I should just keep it on because Steve knew about it a few seconds before it happened, which definitely can give you time to cover. The stop and cover when you need to.
I think it's important to note, this all happened right before, your lunch hour, right before we were preparing for our noon newscast. We're all in the newsroom just doing our thing. And so a friend of ours, a writer, Steve, he and I chat about other things. And all of a sudden he goes, we're about to have an earthquake. And I'll just retell the story if you're just joining us here about an hour since we started our live coverage. So he tells me we're about to have an earthquake and we kind of lock eyes. And in the 5 seconds we're staring at each other, I'm thinking, where's my husband? Where's my children? Where are my parents? Is everything okay? Should we have gotten that earthquake insurance? Is the retrofit going to hold up? And then we felt the shaking, and at least where we are in Oakland's Jack London Square, it was a pretty mild shaking. Yeah. I definitely felt it, and the fact that I was just waiting for it, tensed every muscle, just thinking, all right, come on, when is it going to be? So it worked in that sense. What we should have done in retrospect is gotten underneath the desk, right? Maybe got to a safe, open space if we had time to leave the newsroom. These are all things that we're thinking about now and that we promised to do in the event it should happen again. So the alert is one thing, but it's what you do with it that really counts.
Well, I will say, just in your defense, I mean, usually when something strikes, we are trying to find out information about what's happened. So we are rushing around, hey, what's going on? I immediately jumped up and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go next from here. Yes, we should do that. We should be a little bit more careful. But I jump up because I want to inform people, the viewers of what's going on.
We are working
do the same. We are all working out. So we're talking to the assignment desk and a lot of chatter is going on. But we do train for these things too. We just had our own training here at the building the other day just in case something were to happen. So we're definitely on it too ourselves. But one of the first things I think about it are the viewers. Just want to let some folks know here that Santa Clara County said they're checking all their stations and equipments to ensure that they're ready in case. Again, these are just good reminders of what your local government does in preparation for this. We always talk about the people getting ready, residents getting ready, but it is also the local governments, local first responders that are also constantly prepared should something happen in the future. Again, Sky Fox still there surveying San Jose to see the impacts. You just saw, I think that was Caltrain there. They were forced to slow down just a short time ago when the initial shaking started, and they checked their lines and assessed their lines as well.
Let's go ahead and turn to the mayor of San Jose, Mayor Sam Liccardo, joining us now from what is the Bay Area's most populous city, also the site of this morning's earthquake of 5.1. Mayor, if you're with us, we'd like to know, where you are and what you felt.
I'm here at City Hall, actually, on the top of a 19-story building that was swaying pretty well just a few minutes ago.
And how are things in the city? Have you heard anything contrary to what we've been reporting, which is nerves shaken but no real damage or injuries?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing. So far, no emergency calls appear related to this earthquake. We're very fortunate. This has been certainly a scrimmage that we're fortunate to have before the big game. We know a big one will be coming sometime in the next few years, or maybe in the next few weeks or days. We don't know. And it's important to have these reminders that we need to be prepared. We need to make a family plan. We need to build a kit, do all those things to be ready for that.
And as we look at the VTA train there that just finished up their inspections there, Mary, you're saying you were in that building a little earlier. Can you just talk about a little bit about the experience, what your staff did? I've been to that office several times to interview you, but what was the situation there when you did start feeling the shaking?
Well, I think like a lot of folks, we felt the swaying, and everybody immediately ran outside to make sure everybody else was okay as soon as the swaying stopped. There was a lot of nervous laughter, but I think we're going to get through it fine. One thing I'd encourage everyone to do, though, if they're in the area and they're at home and they smell gas, please turn off the gas and call PG&E right away. We want to make sure that there aren't any impacts that could cause safety challenges for families as they come home.
What do you want people in your city to take away from what we just went through?
Well, this is a very fortunate reminder that we live in an earthquake zone. We're fortunate because there was no harm done this time. The next time we may not be so lucky. And so this is really important for everybody. Go on the FEMA website or on the San Jose City website. It gives you a step-by-step action plan around how to ensure your family's prepared. You have a family plan. You put together an emergency kit. You make sure you know that you've got your medications and so forth all lined up, all the things you need to do to be prepared.
So I know that, in recent years, local and state officials have, in a sense, shifted the burden of the first 72 hours after a major disaster onto us, onto the person at home. It's up to me to care for my family for the first 72 hours. As a city, did it go through your mind of, wow, how well would San Jose do right now if this was a lot more than a 5.1?
Well, we go through the simulations with some frequency, and we spend a lot of time working with our emergency services team as well as our fire and police departments to ensure we can respond to the big one. Obviously, we can never know with perfect accuracy how or where it will most impact the city. But fair to say, we are better prepared now than we have been in a long, long time, and we're going to continue to focus on those kinds of disasters. We've experienced so many of them between floods, droughts, pandemics. We are, fortunately, been able to exercise the muscle, and I think we're ready.
And Mayor, we spoke to our reporter, South Bay reporter Jesse Gary, earlier in our coverage here. He went to the Seven Trees community, didn't report any major damage, but as the city top official, have you checked in and have you heard of anything happening as a result of this earthquake that happened in the Seven Trees community there? Was there any damage reported to your office at all?
No damage has been reported yet. Obviously, some folks may learn of damage in the hours ahead, sure. But at this point, I think we're pretty fortunate.
Okay, and remind us real quick, you were on the 19th floor there at City Hall. That's a newer building, so I assume that you have some safeguards that not every high-rise in the Bay Area enjoys.
Yes, this building's about 15 years old, so we're very fortunate to be in something that's been built with relatively new building codes. The good news is I think this is a state where we take building codes seriously when it comes to earthquakes.
All right. San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo, thank you so much for your insight today as we just stay on the air here for the 5.1 magnitude earthquake that struck southeast of San Jose, about 10 miles in the community of Seven Trees. No serious damage to report, but as an active reminder, just after we mark the great shakeout, the international shakeout here and across the country as well. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it. And that will do it for our coverage here on KTVU News at Noon, our special edition coverage of the earthquake that struck down in San Jose. We'll keep monitoring for any developments across the Bay Area. We know local municipalities are examining their readiness right now and examining to see if there are any damage that was done to buildings and infrastructure across the Bay Area. We'll keep an eye on it for the rest of the afternoon.
I think my adrenaline is finally coming down.
Yeah.
It took about an hour because right when we felt it, we thought, could this be it?
Yeah.
So we're so thankful that you're able to join us. We were able to shed some light on what happened happened. Thankfully, no major damage or injuries. We're going to keep our crews in the South Bay and, of course, get more focus on this. We'll have a complete wrap-up for you today on the 4. And, of course, as soon as we get new info, it goes right up online at the KTV.com site and the KTV News app. I'm glad that you are safe and well. Meet us back here for our next newscast.
Yoga teacher. It's probably the Honey Nut Cheerios. He found out they can help lower cholesterol. Now,
but again, this chart was marked as an exhibit. It's exhibit number 33. If you want it, you can have it in the jury room. The names on this chart will match the names for the extreme dance team on State's Exhibit 15. All of the girls that were struck and injured as they marched with the extreme dance team, plus some people on the back that were handing out candy or serving in support roles